Maajid Nawaz, a former Islamic extremist turned anti-terror crusader, and Buck Sexton, a former CIA officer, now on the Blaze. Good to see you both.
Pleasure.
Where do we go from here, Buck, as far as trying to track down this individual? They're needle in a haystack, or do you think that the authorities have enough information to find the person responsible?
If they have it, they're certainly not sharing it. I think there are a lot of people that would expect that at this stage they would have some details out there. Right now, there's essentially nothing. It's been said that the individual driving the vehicle was masked. We know that the Islamic State has claimed that this is one of theirs, and they use very similar language, by the way. There are now 3 vehicular attacks that the Islamic State has, through its channel, said this was us. Ohio State, Nice, and now the Berlin attack. What's interesting here is that this is an instance where you have somebody who's still on the run, which is a difference from what we usually see in this kind of a circumstance. Usually it's a martyrdom operation or somebody that no longer has to worry about being caught. So the authorities are working not just, of course, to try to track this person down and bring him to justice, but also to prevent what is very likely here, which is the attempt, at least, at another mass casualty attack. Not that hard to get this individual's hands on another vehicle and try to mow down a big crowd of people. So they have a big challenge ahead of them, and they seem like they have very few leads right now.
Yeah, I mean, imagine cars and trucks are everywhere. I mean, you grab one. There was a person obviously found dead in the truck, so we don't know if this was a carjacking, that person had anything to do with it, or just an innocent bystander. But there are plots all over the place in Germany and all throughout Europe. A 12-year-old planning a nail and shrapnel bomb for another Christmas market. I mean, how do we even begin to combat this?
Unfortunately, we've seen all the warning signs for decades, but in particular over the last few years, the terrorist organizations such as ISIS, before them Al-Qaeda, have been instructing people to use everyday instruments and turn them into weapons, to weaponize our day-to-day lives in that sense. And it makes it almost impossible to predict. What I can predict at this stage is that if this man isn't caught, then all the bearings and the pattern of how he's behaved will tell us that what he's planning to do is another attack. He clearly shot the guy that was in, well, it looks like he shot the guy that was in the truck, so he's armed. And he probably doesn't intend to get caught until he can conduct another attack. And everything we see from this attack looks like a typical ISIS kind of attack, as it was in Nice. Now, ISIS, of course, can claim responsibility for it, and that almost becomes irrelevant, because actually any form of attack in this way, any jihadist attack, will have the same effect on German society. Merkel is up for re-election, and one thing that ISIS is very clear on, because they've told us, is that they want to polarize European society even further. And actually, as that election comes forward next year, we'll probably see, unfortunately, more such attacks.
And does it matter at this point whether this person is formally connected to ISIS, whether he ever went to a training camp, or he's just an inspired lone wolf? I mean, the end result is the same: dead people and terror.
This is one of the terrible legacies of the Islamic State, whereas Al-Qaeda was generally thought of more for its massive operational planning abroad, like 9/11 and other attacks that bring down embassies, bring down planes. The Islamic State very explicitly, and for months, by the way, leading up to this attack, and there were some that were thwarted in Germany as well, which did not get a lot of coverage, with people that tried to pull off something similar to this. But the Islamic State was saying, use knives, use vehicles, use whatever you have at hand. As Maajid just said, weaponizing everyday life around you, essentially creating a state of total and constant war for civilians in Europe, and if they could, here in America as well. These are the explicit instructions that are in the jihadist material, that are in their magazines, their propaganda they put out there. And so anybody who decides to act on this is inherently a part of this sort of ISIS virtual caliphate, if you will, and they encourage this. So there doesn't have to be a formal affiliation at all. ISIS can claim credit merely by saying, we incited this and we want more of this.
By the way, today, Lucas Tomlinson, who is our Pentagon producer, confirmed with 2 defense officials that 22 Gitmo detainees are set to be released. The president's trying to get them released before Inauguration Day for the new president in 2017. We've been told all along that it is a propaganda tool against the U.S. Is this a gesture of goodwill to let these people go? Do they come out, imagine, even more hardened and ready to go back to this kind of activity?
Well, the rates of recidivism for people that have been inside those sorts of detention centers, especially in, say, Saudi Arabia, where they attempted that form of detention, are quite high. But frankly, one thing we have to understand with jihadist terrorist organizations is that they will exploit any form of grievance, and even if those grievances are entirely concocted. Let's take the example of Syria. ISIS, the very organization we're talking about now, before the West intervened to stop stop them engaging in a genocide against the Yazidi population were telling the Syrian population the West doesn't care about you, and that's why they're not intervening. When the intervention did happen to attempt to stop a genocide, they then said, look at these Western imperialists coming here in an attempt to invade our countries. So they will twist and turn any kind of world event to justify it as a grievance, when really what they're interested in is ideological proselytization.
And leveraging whatever opportunity they have.
Absolutely.
Maajid and Buck, great to see you both. Thank you.
Pleasure.
All right, yesterday's attack in Berlin also energizing critics of European immigration policies, specifically that recent influx of refugees from nations like Syria. And despite the concerns even back in 2015 that ISIS could infiltrate the population, this is what we're hearing from German Chancellor Angela Merkel.
Wir haben so vieles geschafft, wir schaffen das. Können das schaffen und wir schaffen das.
Wir schaffen das, da bin ich ganz fest davon überzeugt.